The late afternoon sun streamed through the large bay windows of the Victorian-style house, casting long shadows across the hardwood floors. Dr. Maya Johnson wiped sweat from her brow as she scrubbed at a stubborn stain on the kitchen counter. After years of saving and working double shifts at Memorial Hospital, she had finally purchased her dream home in Oak Hill, one of the most sought-after neighborhoods in the city. Almost done with this kitchen, she muttered to herself, glancing around at the boxes still scattered throughout the room. Moving was exhausting, but there was something deeply satisfying about cleaning every corner of a place that was finally, truly hers. Maya had grown up in a small apartment with her mother and two siblings. Space had always been tight, voices always echoing off close walls. Now, at 35, after putting herself through medical school and establishing herself as one of the city's most respected trauma surgeons, she had rooms to spare. The thought made her smile as she dunked her sponge back into the bucket of soapy water. She didn't hear the car pull up outside. Didn't notice the neighbor across the street watching her through the windows with narrowed eyes, phone pressed to ear. Maya was lost in her own world, humming softly to herself as she moved from the counter to the sink, her old college t-shirt and sweatpants covered in dust and cleaning solution. The first indication that something was wrong came when she heard heavy footsteps on the porch. Before she could react, the front door, which she'd left unlocked to make carrying cleaning supplies easier, burst open with a bang that echoed through the half-empty house. Police! Don't move! Maya froze, sponge still clutched in her hand, water dripping onto the floor. Standing in her entryway was a white police officer, his gun drawn and pointed directly at her chest. His face was tight with suspicion, eyes narrowed, body tense like a coiled spring. "I said don't move," Officer Richard Brennan barked when Maya instinctively took a step back. His finger hovered dangerously close to the trigger of his service weapon. "What's happening?" Maya asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the fear flooding her system. Years of working in emergency medicine had taught her to remain calm in crisis. "This is my house." The officer scoffed, his eyes quickly scanning the room, taking in the boxes, the cleaning supplies, Maya's casual clothes. "We got a call about a break-in at this address. Someone reported an intruder." "I'm not an intruder," Maya said carefully, keeping her hands visible. "I'm the homeowner. I just moved in yesterday." Officer Brennan's expression didn't change. If anything, his grip on the gun tightened. "Right. And I'm supposed to just take your word for that?" Maya took a slow, deep breath. This wasn't her first encounter with prejudice, but it was certainly one of the most dangerous. She could feel her heart hammering against her ribs, could sense the adrenaline coursing through her veins, but she kept her face neutral. She'd learned long ago that showing fear or anger in situations like this only made things worse. "My paperwork is on the dining room table," she said evenly. "Closing documents, deed, everything. I can show you if you'll allow me to move." "You expect me to believe someone like you bought a house in Oak Hill?" The officer's tone was thick with disbelief, the implication of his words hanging heavy in the air between them. Maya felt a familiar weight settle in her stomach. How many times had she walked into a patient's room only to have them ask when the real doctor was coming? How many times had she been mistaken for a nurse, a janitor, anything but the highly trained surgeon she was? And now in her own home she was being treated like a criminal. "I'm a trauma surgeon at Memorial," she explained, keeping her voice level. "I've been saving for this house for years. Please, the paperwork is right there. You can verify everything." Officer Brennan didn't lower his weapon, but his eyes flickered toward the dining room. "Don't move," he ordered again, beginning to edge sideways toward the table visible through the archway. The gun remained pointed at Maya. Through the windows, Maya could see another patrol car pulling up. Neighbors were gathering on the sidewalk, watching the scene unfold with curious eyes. Her chest tightened. This was supposed to be her fresh start, her new beginning. Now her first impression on the neighborhood would be this: standing in her own home with guns pointed at her. "My ID is in my purse," she said quietly. "It's hanging by the door. There's also a photo album in that box by your feet. It has pictures of me receiving an award from Police Captain Thomas Rivera last year. I performed the surgery that saved his life after he was shot in the line of duty." Something flashed across Officer Brennan's face. Doubt, perhaps. But the gun didn't waver. "Check the papers," Maya insisted. "Please." With one hand still gripping his weapon, Officer Brennan reached for the stack of documents on the dining table. He flipped through them awkwardly, eyes darting between the papers and Maya. She could see the moment he registered her name on the deed, saw the official stamp from the county clerk, the signatures of the previous owners. These could be forged, he said, but there was less conviction in his voice now. The front door opened again as a second officer entered. This one was older, with gray at his temples and lines around his eyes that deepened when he took in the scene before him. "What's the situation, Brennan?" he asked. "Possible break-in," Officer Brennan replied, but he sounded less certain now. "Subject claims she's the homeowner." The older officer looked at Maya, then at the cleaning supplies scattered around, the boxes half unpacked. "Ma'am, can you identify yourself?" "My name is Dr. Maya Johnson," she replied. "I purchased this house last month and moved in yesterday. All my paperwork is there on the table and my ID is in my purse by the door." The second officer, his nameplate read Wilson, nodded and moved to check her purse. Unlike his partner, he kept his weapon holstered. He pulled out her wallet and examined her driver's license. "Dr. Maya Johnson," he read aloud. "Address matches." He looked up at her, then back at the ID. "You work at Memorial?" "Yes, I'm the head of trauma surgery." Officer Wilson's posture relaxed slightly. "My wife had her appendix out there last year." "Good hospital." Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The absurdity of making small talk about a hospital while still having a gun pointed at her wasn't lost on her. "Brennan," Officer Wilson said quietly. "Check the box you mentioned." Officer Brennan hesitated, then slowly crouched down, his gun still trained on Maya as he used one hand to flip open the cardboard box at his feet. Inside was a leather-bound photo album. He pulled it out and awkwardly thumbed it open to a page where Maya stood in surgical scrubs, shaking hands with a man in a police dress uniform. A banner in the background read, "Memorial Hospital Honors First Responders." The blood drained from Officer Brennan's face as he recognized his own captain in the photo. His gaze moved from the picture to Maya and back again, recognition finally dawning in his eyes. That's Captain Rivera," he said, his voice suddenly hoarse. "Yes," Maya replied simply. "He was shot twice in the chest during a drug bust last spring. I was the lead surgeon on his case. There were complications. He nearly died on the table, but we managed to save him." Officer Wilson stepped forward and placed a hand on his partner's arm. "Lower your weapon, Brennan. This is clearly a misunderstanding." For a moment, Officer Brennan didn't move. Then slowly he lowered his gun, though he didn't holster it. We received a call," he said stiffly. "A neighbor reported someone who didn't belong in the neighborhood." Maya let out a long breath, her shoulders dropping slightly as the immediate threat receded. "I understand you were responding to a call," she said. "But you entered my home without knocking, without identifying yourself properly, and pointed a gun at me without giving me a chance to explain." The weight of her words hung in the air. All three of them knew what had really happened, what assumptions had been made the moment Officer Brennan saw a black woman in an expensive home in an overwhelmingly white neighborhood. Outside, the crowd of neighbors had grown. Maya could see them whispering among themselves, pointing at the police cars. This was not how she had imagined meeting them. "We apologize for the confusion, Dr. Johnson," Officer Wilson said, breaking the tense silence. "We'll speak with the neighbor who made the call and clear things up." Maya nodded, suddenly feeling exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and drained. "Thank you." Officer Brennan still hadn't spoken. He stood rigid, staring at the photo album in his hands. The image of Maya saving his captain's life seemingly impossible to reconcile with the threat he had perceived when he burst through her door. And in that moment, as the late afternoon sun continued to stream through the windows of her new home, Maya Johnson knew that this encounter was far from over. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the distant sounds of neighbors murmuring outside. Officer Brennan still stood frozen, the photo album clutched in his hands, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. Officer Wilson shifted uncomfortably beside him, clearly eager to defuse the situation. "Dr. Johnson, again, we apologize for the misunderstanding," Officer Wilson said, his tone professional but gentle. "We'll be speaking with the neighbor who made the call." Maya nodded, her arms crossed protectively over her chest. The initial shock was wearing off, leaving behind a familiar weariness. "I'd appreciate that," she said quietly. Officer Brennan finally seemed to snap out of his trance. He closed the photo album and carefully placed it back in the box, his movements deliberate, as if buying time. When he straightened up, his face had hardened into a defensive mask. We were just doing our job, he said stiffly. When we get a call about a potential break-in— Richard, Officer Wilson cut him off with a warning look. This isn't the time. Maya watched the exchange with tired eyes. How many times had she heard similar excuses? How many times had just doing our job been used to justify actions that never would have happened to her white colleagues? I understand you were responding to a call, she said, her voice calm but firm. What I don't understand is why you felt the need to enter without properly announcing yourself. Why your gun was drawn before you had assessed any actual threat, and why you continued to point that gun at me even after I told you this was my home. Officer Brennan's jaw tightened. Standard procedure for a potential break-in situation. Is it standard procedure to assume guilt before innocence? Maya asked. Is it standard procedure to ignore a homeowner's explanation? Would you have treated a white woman cleaning her kitchen the same way? The questions hung in the air, unanswered because they all knew the truth. A knock at the still-open front door interrupted the tense standoff. A woman in her 50s with carefully styled blonde hair peered in, her expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. I saw the police cars, she said, glancing between the officers and Maya. Is everything all right? Officer Wilson turned toward her. Ma'am, we're handling a situation here. If you could please return to your home. I live next door, the woman explained, taking a small step inside. I'm Gloria Thompson. Her eyes settled on Maya with undisguised interest. I didn't realize someone had moved in already. Maya took a deep breath, steadying herself. First impressions mattered, especially in a neighborhood like this one. Despite everything that had just happened, she forced a polite smile. Maya Johnson. I moved in yesterday. Gloria's eyebrows rose slightly. Oh, you're the doctor, aren't you? The real estate agent mentioned something about the new owner being a doctor. Before Maya could respond, another figure appeared in the doorway, a tall, broad-shouldered man with salt-and-pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. What's going on here? He asked, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone used to being listened to. Why are there police cars outside our new neighbor's house? Officer Wilson cleared his throat. Sir, this is police business. If you could please— I'm Dr. William Fletcher, the man interrupted, stepping fully into the house. I live across the street. His eyes fell on Maya, taking in her dust-covered clothes and the cleaning supplies scattered around. Understanding seemed to dawn on his face. Let me guess, he said dryly. Someone called the police because they saw a black person in this neighborhood and automatically assumed the worst? The bluntness of his statement seemed to suck all the air out of the room. Gloria looked down at her shoes. Officer Wilson winced and Officer Brennan's face flushed red. Maya felt a surge of gratitude toward this stranger, who had so accurately named what had happened. That appears to be the case, she said quietly. Dr. Fletcher shook his head in disgust. I apologize on behalf of whoever did that, though I have my suspicions. He shot a pointed look at Gloria, who seemed to shrink under his gaze. Oak Hill likes to pretend it's progressive, but old habits die hard. He stepped forward and extended his hand to Maya. William Fletcher. I'm the chief of pediatrics at Mercy General. My wife and I have lived across the street for 15 years. Maya shook his hand, finding comfort in the simple, normal gesture after the chaos of the past half hour. Maya Johnson. Trauma surgery at Memorial. Dr. Fletcher's face lit up with recognition. You're the one who saved Captain Rivera last year. That was remarkable work. Multiple GSWs to the chest, wasn't it? I read the case study. For the first time since the police had burst through her door, Maya felt something like normalcy returning. Yes, it was a challenging case. We nearly lost him twice on the table. Officer Brennan made a choked sound, drawing everyone's attention back to him. His face had gone pale and he was staring at Maya with new eyes that finally saw her as a person, as a professional, as someone who had saved the life of a man he respected. You really did save Captain Rivera, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Maya replied simply. I did. The weight of this reality seemed to physically affect Officer Brennan. His shoulders slumped and something in his expression cracked. The bravado and defensiveness were falling away, revealing something raw and uncomfortable beneath. He has 3 kids, Officer Brennan said quietly. His youngest just started kindergarten last month. Maya nodded. I know, he showed me pictures when he came for his follow-up. Beautiful family. Officer Wilson, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, cleared his throat. Dr. Johnson, would you like to file a formal complaint about today's incident? It's your right. The question hung in the air. Maya looked at Officer Brennan, saw the fear creeping into his eyes. A complaint could mean suspension, possibly worse. It could mean an investigation, his name in reports, his reputation tarnished. Part of her wanted that. Part of her wanted him to face consequences for the fear he had caused her, for the assumptions he had made, for the gun he had pointed at her chest without a second thought. But another part of her, the part that had dedicated her life to healing, hesitated. "I need to think about it," she finally said. Gloria, who had been quiet during this exchange, suddenly spoke up. "I brought you a welcome basket," she blurted out, though her hands were empty. It's in my car. I'll go get it," she hurried out, clearly eager to escape the tension. Dr. Fletcher watched her go with a knowing look. $10 says she's the one who called the police, he said once she was out of earshot. "William," a woman appeared in the doorway, elegant in a simple blue dress, her natural gray hair cropped short. "I told you not to barge in here." She offered Maya an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry about my husband. He means well, but subtlety isn't his strong suit." "Diane Fletcher," she introduced herself, stepping into the house. "And you must be Dr. Johnson. Welcome to the neighborhood, though I wish it could have been under better circumstances." She shot a disapproving look at the officers. The arrival of the Fletchers had completely changed the dynamic in the room. Where there had been tension and fear, there was now something closer to an awkward social gathering. Officer Wilson seemed to recognize this shift and took a step toward the door. "We should be going," he said. "Dr. Johnson, here's my card if you decide to file that complaint or if you need anything else." He placed a business card on the counter, then turned to his partner. "Brennan, let's go." But Officer Brennan didn't move. He stood rooted to the spot, staring at Maya with an expression that was becoming increasingly distressed. The reality of what he had done, what he had almost done, seemed to be sinking in deeper with each passing moment. He began, then stopped, swallowing hard. "Dr. Johnson, Maya waited, watching as he struggled to find words. "Captain Rivera talks about you all the time," he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. "He says you're the reason his kids still have a father. He says you're the best surgeon he's ever met." Maya said nothing, letting his words hang in the air between them. "And Officer Brennan's voice cracked. "I pointed my gun at you. In your own home." The room fell silent. Even the Fletchers seemed to hold their breath, aware they were witnessing something significant. Officer Brennan's face crumpled with shame, the full weight of his actions finally hitting him. "I saw a black woman in an expensive house, and I just assumed—" He couldn't finish the sentence. In that moment, standing in her half-unpacked kitchen, surrounded by strangers, Maya Johnson realized that this encounter had become something none of them had expected. It had become a reckoning. The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence that followed Officer Brennan's unfinished confession. Nobody moved. Officer Wilson stood awkwardly by the door, clearly unsure whether to stay or go. The Fletchers exchanged a look that spoke volumes. They hadn't expected to walk into something this raw and personal on what should have been a simple welcome visit to a new neighbor. Maya studied Officer Brennan's face. The man who had burst through her door with such confidence and authority now looked lost, his certainties crumbling around him. She had seen similar expressions before, on the faces of residents when they made their first major mistake in surgery, on family members when they realized a loved one wouldn't survive, on patients when they received life-altering diagnoses. It was the look of someone whose world was shifting beneath their feet. "I think," Dr. Fletcher said quietly, breaking the heavy silence, "that the two of you might need a moment to talk." He glanced at his wife, who nodded in understanding. "We'll come back later," Diane said, touching Maya's arm gently, "when you've had a chance to settle in properly. Perhaps for dinner this weekend?" Maya appreciated their perceptiveness. "I'd like that," she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Officer Wilson cleared his throat. "I should file our report. Brennan, I'll wait in the car." He nodded to Maya. "Again, Dr. Johnson, I apologize for the disturbance." As the Fletchers and Officer Wilson left, Gloria Thompson reappeared in the doorway, clutching a small wicker basket wrapped in cellophane. She looked uncertainly between Maya and Officer Brennan, sensing the tension. "I brought this," she said, holding out the basket. Just some local honey and jam and information about the neighborhood association. We meet on the first Tuesday of every month. Maya accepted the basket with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Thank you. Gloria lingered, clearly burning with curiosity about what was happening. When neither Maya nor Officer Brennan spoke, she reluctantly backed toward the door. Well, welcome to Oak Hill. I'm sure we'll be seeing a lot of each other. When she finally left, Maya and Officer Brennan were alone. The house seemed quieter than before, the late afternoon sun casting longer shadows across the floor. Maya set the welcome basket on the counter and turned to face the officer who had pointed a gun at her just 30 minutes earlier. You were saying? She prompted, her voice steady. Officer Brennan's hands were trembling slightly. He clenched them into fists at his sides, then consciously relaxed them, as if trying to regain control. I was raised better than this, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. My mom would be ashamed of me right now. Maya didn't respond. She had no interest in comforting him or making this easier. I saw you, he continued, struggling to maintain eye contact, and I made assumptions. Assumptions I've been trained not to make. Assumptions I tell myself I don't make. He swallowed hard, but I did make them. And I could have... He couldn't finish the sentence. You could have killed me, Maya said, completing his thought. Her voice was calm but unflinching. In my own home. While I was cleaning my kitchen. Officer Brennan flinched as if he'd been struck. Yes, he admitted, the word seeming to physically pain him. Maya moved to her sink and filled a glass with water. Her throat felt suddenly dry. She took a long sip, using the moment to collect her thoughts. Do you know what happened to me last week? She asked, turning back to him. I was in the hospital parking garage heading home after a 12-hour shift. A white woman saw me approaching my car, a new Audi I bought myself as a gift when I made head of trauma, and she clutched her purse tighter and hurried away. To her, I wasn't a doctor who had just saved 3 lives. I was a threat. She set the glass down with a soft clink. The security guard who watches that same garage greets all the white doctors by their titles. He calls me Miss, every time. Officer Brennan looked at the floor. 2 months ago, Maya continued, I was consulting on a case at Mercy General. I was examining a patient when his wife came in and asked when the doctor would arrive. I was wearing my white coat with my name and title clearly visible. She looked right past it. She wasn't raising her voice, wasn't showing anger. She was simply stating facts, laying them out one by one like exhibits in a case. These things happen to me every day. Small cuts. Little reminders that no matter my achievements, my education, my contribution to society, some people will always see my skin first and everything else second, if at all. She took another sip of water. But today wasn't a small cut, Officer Brennan. Today you broke into my home and pointed a gun at me because you saw a black woman in a nice house, and your first thought wasn't homeowner but criminal. Officer Brennan remained silent, but tears had begun to well in his eyes. You know what's truly frightening? Maya asked. If I had reacted out of fear, if I had moved suddenly, if I had raised my voice, I might be dead right now. And you would have convinced yourself that you had no choice, that you were threatened, that you were just doing your job. The truth of her words hung in the air between them. Officer Brennan knew she was right. They both did. I've been a police officer for 8 years, he said finally, his voice hoarse. I tell myself I'm one of the good ones. That I treat everyone the same. That I don't see color. He shook his head slowly. But today proves that's not true. Maya watched him carefully. No, it's not. I don't know what to do with that, he admitted, looking utterly lost. I don't know how to fix this. Maya leaned against the counter, suddenly feeling the exhaustion of the day. She had planned to unpack, to organize her new kitchen, to begin turning this house into a home. Instead, she was standing here having this conversation, carrying the emotional weight of yet another incident. I can't fix it for you, she said. That's not my job. I didn't create this problem, and I shouldn't have to be the one to solve it. Officer Brennan nodded, accepting her words. Then slowly, deliberately, he unclipped his badge from his uniform and placed it on the counter. He unbuckled his utility belt, gun, taser, handcuffs, radio, and set it beside the badge. Maya watched, puzzled, as he then lowered himself to his knees on her kitchen floor. What are you doing? She asked. I don't deserve to wear this badge, he said, his voice breaking. Not after what I did today. Not after what I almost did. Tears were flowing freely down his face now. "I could have killed you," he repeated, the full horror of that possibility finally hitting him with its full force. "An innocent person, a doctor, someone who saves lives. I could have taken your life because of my own prejudice, my own assumptions." He looked up at her, his face open and vulnerable in a way it hadn't been before. "I can't undo what happened. I can't take back pulling my gun on you. But I'm begging you, not for forgiveness, I don't deserve that, but for a chance to be better. To do better." Maya stood very still, taken aback by the raw emotion, the complete breakdown of the professional distance that had been between them. This wasn't in the script, she knew. Police officers didn't kneel and cry and admit their prejudices. They defended. They justified. They closed ranks. "Get up," she said, uncomfortable with his posture. "Please." But Officer Brennan shook his head. "I need you to understand how sorry I am, how ashamed I am. I need you to know that I see what I did, and I take full responsibility for it." Maya sighed. "I believe you're sorry. But being sorry isn't enough. And this," she gestured to his kneeling form, "this doesn't fix anything." "I know," he said quietly. "Nothing can fix what I did today. But I'm asking you, what can I do now? What should I do?" It wasn't a rhetorical question. He was genuinely asking her guidance, looking to her for direction. The irony wasn't lost on Maya, a white police officer on his knees, asking a black woman he had just traumatized to tell him how to be a better person. Part of her wanted to tell him that it wasn't her responsibility to educate him, to guide him, to help him grow. She had her own life, her own struggles, her own path. She didn't owe him anything. But another part of her, the part that had chosen medicine, that had dedicated herself to healing, saw something in his broken expression that gave her pause. A genuine recognition, a moment of true seeing. And in that moment, standing in her new kitchen with the late afternoon sun streaming through the windows, Dr. Maya Johnson faced a choice about what kind of healing she was willing to offer. Maya took a deep breath and leaned against the kitchen counter, studying the man kneeling before her. Officer Brennan's uniform, once a symbol of authority and power, now seemed to hang heavily on his shoulders. His face was open, vulnerable, the professional mask completely gone. "Stand up," she said again, more firmly this time. "This isn't helping either of us." After a moment's hesitation, Officer Brennan slowly rose to his feet, wiping tears from his face with the back of his hand. He looked somehow smaller than he had when he'd burst through her door. Gun drawn. "I don't know what to do," he repeated, his voice quiet but steadier now. Maya walked to the window and looked out at the neighborhood she had chosen for her new home. Oak Hill, with its tree-lined streets and well-maintained houses. A place she had worked so hard to be able to afford, a place where, within hours of moving in, she'd been treated like an intruder. "Do you have kids, Officer Brennan?" she asked, still looking out the window. The question seemed to catch him off guard. "Yes, a daughter. She's 6. Maya nodded, turning back to face him. "What's her name?" "Lily," he answered, a hint of softness entering his voice despite the tension in the room. "What do you want for Lily?" Maya asked. "What kind of world do you want her to grow up in?" Officer Brennan didn't hesitate. "A safe one. A fair one. Is this world fair?" Maya pressed, gesturing around them. "Is it fair that I have to worry about being shot in my own kitchen? Is it fair that my professional achievements, my education, my character, all become invisible the moment someone sees the color of my skin?" He looked down. No, Maya agreed. "It's not fair. And it's not safe. Not for people who look like me." She moved to the refrigerator and pulled out a bottle of water, offering it to him. A simple gesture of humanity in the midst of a difficult conversation. After a moment's surprise, he accepted it. "I became a doctor because I wanted to help people," Maya said, opening a bottle for herself as well. "I wanted to save lives, to make a difference. I imagine you became a police officer for similar reasons." Officer Brennan nodded slowly. "My dad was a cop. His dad, too. I grew up hearing stories about how they protected people, served the community. I wanted to do the same. But today you didn't protect me," Maya said bluntly. "You endangered me. You didn't serve me as a member of this community. You treated me like a threat." The words hit him hard, but he didn't deny them. "Yes," he admitted. "I did." Maya took a sip of water, gathering her thoughts. "Here's what I think, Officer Brennan. I think you have 2 choices right now. You can walk out that door, put this incident behind you, and go back to believing you're one of the good ones. You can tell yourself this was a one-time mistake, an anomaly, not who you really are. Officer Brennan watched her intently, hanging on her words, or, Maya continued, you can accept that what happened today revealed something true about yourself. Something uncomfortable and painful, but true. And you can decide to do the hard work of changing. Not just for today, not just because you got caught, but permanently. I want to change, he said immediately. I never want to make a mistake like this again. Maya shook her head slightly. It wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to turn off the stove or missing a turn while driving. What happened today was the result of deeply ingrained biases that you may not even be fully aware of. Changing those takes more than just wanting to. It takes commitment, education, and constant self-examination. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across her half-unpacked living room. Through the window, Maya could see Officer Wilson still waiting in the patrol car, occasionally glancing toward the house. Your partner is waiting, she observed. Officer Brennan didn't turn to look. I need to make this right. You can't make it right, Maya said gently. You can't undo what happened. But you can learn from it. You can do better going forward. She walked to the dining room table and pulled out a chair, gesturing for him to sit. After a moment's hesitation, he did. Maya sat across from him, the polished wood of her new dining table between them. I run a program at the hospital, she said. It started as a way to improve communication between healthcare providers and patients from different backgrounds. We found that miscommunications, assumptions, and biases were affecting the quality of care certain patients received. Officer Brennan listened attentively. Over time, it evolved into something bigger, a training program on recognizing and addressing unconscious bias in healthcare. We work with doctors, nurses, administrators, everyone. The results have been encouraging. Understanding dawned on Officer Brennan's face. You think something like that could help the police department? I think it could, Maya nodded. But more importantly, I think it could help you. For the first time since the confrontation began, a flicker of hope appeared in Officer Brennan's eyes. Would you be willing to bring that program to our department? Maya considered the question carefully. She was already stretched thin at the hospital. Taking on additional work, especially work that would require her to revisit this trauma, to put herself in spaces where she might not feel safe, was a lot to ask. I would need some conditions, she said finally. Anything, Officer Brennan replied quickly. First, I want a formal apology. Not just to me, but a public acknowledgement that what happened today was wrong and why. Officer Brennan swallowed hard but nodded. I can do that. Second, I want commitment from your captain. This can't be a one-time workshop that everyone sits through and then forgets. It needs to be ongoing, with measurable outcomes and accountability. I'll talk to Captain Rivera, Officer Brennan promised. After what you did for him, I know he'll listen. Maya raised an eyebrow. Don't use what I did for him as leverage. This isn't about personal favors. It's about systemic change. Officer Brennan looked properly chastened. You're right. I'm sorry. And third, Maya continued, I want you to do your own work. Read books about racial justice. Listen to people of color when they share their experiences. Talk to your daughter about fairness and bias in ways she can understand. Don't put the burden of your education entirely on me or on the program. She leaned forward slightly. This isn't a quick fix, Officer Brennan. There's no workshop or training that will magically remove biases you've spent a lifetime absorbing. This is a commitment to ongoing growth and change. Officer Brennan met her gaze, and Maya saw something shift in his eyes, a deepening of understanding, a recognition of the magnitude of what she was saying. I understand, he said, and for the first time Maya believed him. And I'm willing to do the work. Maya nodded, a weight lifting from her shoulders. She hadn't realized until this moment how much she had needed to hear those words, not just for herself but for all the patients, students, and colleagues who had experienced similar biases and never received acknowledgement or commitment to change. Then I'll help, she said simply. Officer Brennan released a breath he seemed to have been holding. Thank you, he said, the words carrying the weight of genuine gratitude. I don't deserve your help after what I did. This isn't about what you deserve, Maya clarified. It's about creating change that reaches beyond just you and me. It's about making sure what happened today doesn't happen to someone else tomorrow. She glanced at the clock on the wall. Your partner has been waiting a long time. Officer Brennan nodded, reluctantly standing up. He gathered his utility belt and badge from the counter where he had placed them. I'll call Captain Rivera tonight, he said as he buckled the belt. And I'll file a complete report about what happened here, the truth, all of it. Good, Maya said, rising as well. I'll be in touch about the program. They walked to the door together, an oddly formal end to such an intense encounter. On the threshold, Officer Brennan turned to her one last time. Dr. Johnson, he said, his voice solemn, I want you to know that I see you now. Not just as the doctor who saved my captain. Not just as a black woman in an expensive house. I see you as a person who deserved better than what happened today. And I promise you I will do everything in my power to be better. Maya looked into his eyes and saw sincerity there. Imperfect, human sincerity. I believe you, she said softly. Now prove it. As she watched him walk back to the patrol car, Maya felt a complex mix of emotions, exhaustion, lingering anger, but also a cautious hope. Not hope that racism would disappear overnight, or that one conversation could undo generations of bias, but hope that change was possible, person by person, interaction by interaction. She closed the door of her new home and turned back to the half-unpacked boxes waiting for her. There was still work to be done. There always would be. 6 months later, Maya stood at the podium in the police department's community room, looking out at the rows of officers in uniform. Some faces were attentive and engaged, others skeptical, a few openly resistant. In the front row sat Officer Brennan, his posture straight, his eyes focused intently on her words. Today marks the completion of our first full training cycle, Maya said, her voice carrying clearly through the room. But as I've emphasized throughout this program, completion doesn't mean conclusion. The work of recognizing and addressing bias is ongoing. It's a practice, not a destination. Behind her, a projection screen displayed statistics from the department's community engagement efforts over the past 6 months. Increases in positive interactions, decreases in use of force incidents, improved response times in neighborhoods that had historically been underserved. Captain Rivera stood up from his seat beside the police chief. The scar from the shooting that had brought him to Maya's operating table was just visible above his collar. Dr. Johnson has given us invaluable tools, he said, addressing his officers. But more importantly, she's given us a mirror, one that shows us not just who we are, but who we can become. I want to personally thank her for her courage, her expertise, and her willingness to work with us after an incident that could have ended very differently. Maya caught Officer Brennan's eye. They both knew exactly what incident the captain was referring to. What had begun as a terrible confrontation in her kitchen had, over the past 6 months, transformed into something neither of them could have predicted. The day after the incident, Officer Brennan had gone to his captain with a full account of what had happened. He hadn't minimized his actions or tried to justify them. He had simply told the truth, that he had drawn his weapon on an innocent homeowner based on nothing more than unconscious bias. That he had nearly made a devastating mistake. That he needed help to ensure it never happened again. To his credit, Captain Rivera had listened. And then he had acted, reaching out to Maya about bringing her hospital's bias training program to the department. What could have been a lawsuit, a media scandal, a career-ending mistake had instead become the catalyst for departmental change. Not that it had been easy. There had been resistance from some officers who felt attacked or defensive. There had been skeptics who viewed the training as a PR move rather than a genuine commitment to change. There had been tense moments and difficult conversations. And for Maya, there had been the emotional toll of regularly entering a space filled with uniforms and guns after having one pointed at her in her own home. There had been nights when she questioned her decision to help, when the weight of the work felt too heavy to bear alongside her demanding job at the hospital. But there had also been progress. Real, measurable progress. After the brief ceremony concluded, Maya gathered her materials while officers filed out of the room. Some stopped to thank her personally. Others merely nodded in acknowledgement as they passed. Progress came in many forms. Dr. Johnson. Maya looked up to see Officer Brennan approaching, his cap in his hands. Behind him stood a small girl with her hair in braids and a woman who Maya assumed was his wife. "I wanted to introduce you to my family," he said. "This is my wife Nicole and my daughter Lily." The little girl looked up at Maya with curious eyes. "My daddy says you're the bravest person he knows," she said matter-of-factly. Maya smiled, crouching down to Lily's level. "Is that what he says?" Lily nodded solemnly. "He says you taught him how to be a better police officer and a better daddy." Maya glanced up at Officer Brennan, who looked both embarrassed and proud. "Your daddy is learning important things," she told Lily, "and that makes him brave too." Nicole extended her hand to Maya. "Thank you," she said simply. "Rick told me everything about what happened that day. Everything." Her emphasis made it clear that her husband had been completely honest about his actions. "What you've done since then?" "Not many people would have made that choice." Maya shook her hand. "I didn't do it just for him," she clarified. "I did it for my community. For all of us." Nicole nodded in understanding. "Still, thank you." As they walked away, Captain Rivera approached, accompanied by the police chief and the mayor, a trio of the city's most powerful officials all coming to express their gratitude to her. "Dr. Johnson," the mayor said, shaking her hand firmly, "the impact of this program has exceeded our expectations. We'd like to discuss expanding it to other departments in the city." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Other departments?" "Fire, EMS, even city administrative offices," the mayor explained. "Bias doesn't just exist in policing, it's everywhere in our systems." Maya felt a familiar mixture of exhaustion and determination. More work, more difficult conversations, more emotional labor, and yet, the possibility of more change, more progress. "I'd be happy to discuss it," she said carefully, "but I'll need more support. This can't be a one-woman operation if we're going to scale it." The chief nodded. "We've already discussed allocating budget for staff and resources. This is a priority for us now." As they talked details, Maya noticed Dr. Fletcher entering the community room, scanning the crowd until he spotted her. He waved and made his way over. "Sorry I'm late," he said, joining their circle. "Surgery ran long. Did I miss the whole thing?" "Just the ceremony," Maya told him. "You're in time for the boring administrative discussions." Dr. Fletcher had become more than just a neighbor over the past 6 months. He'd become a mentor, a sounding board, and eventually, a partner in her expanded bias training program, bringing his expertise from Mercy General to complement her work at Memorial. "Not boring at all," he protested good-naturedly. "This is where the real work happens." He wasn't wrong. The ceremonies and public acknowledgments were important, but the true change came from the unglamorous work of policy revisions, curriculum development, budget allocations, and metrics tracking. It came from the daily practice of seeing people fully and treating them with dignity. Later that evening, Maya sat on her back porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset over her garden. The house that had once been the site of such a traumatic beginning had, over time, become a true home. She had painted the walls, arranged her furniture, planted flowers that were now blooming in vibrant colors. Her phone buzzed with a text from Diane Fletcher. "Still on for book club tomorrow night?" Maya smiled and replied affirmatively. The neighborhood book club had been Diane's idea, a way to bring together residents from different backgrounds to discuss literature that expanded their perspectives. What had begun as a small gathering in Maya's living room had grown to include 15 regular members, including Gloria Thompson, who had indeed been the one to call the police that first day. Gloria had never explicitly apologized for making that call, but her consistent attendance at the book club, her thoughtful comments during discussions of books about race and identity, and her recent volunteer work with Maya's community clinic spoke volumes about her own journey. As Maya sipped her wine, she reflected on the unexpected path her life had taken since that afternoon 6 months ago. She had moved to Oak Hill looking for a nice house in a good neighborhood. She hadn't planned on becoming an agent of change for the local police department, the hospital system, and her community. The work was challenging and ongoing. There were still days when she faced subtle biases in her professional life, days when patients looked surprised to see a black woman as their surgeon, days when colleagues made thoughtless comments. There were still moments when she walked into a high-end store and felt security eyes following her, or when she sensed a passing car slow down as she jogged through her neighborhood. Systemic racism wouldn't disappear because of one training program or one changed mind. But when she thought about Officer Brennan, who now volunteered as a coach for youth in underserved communities and had recently been promoted to a training position where he could influence new officers, she felt that cautious hope again. Person by person, interaction by interaction, day by day. Her doorbell rang, interrupting her thoughts. Maya set down her wine glass and went to answer it, finding her next-door neighbors on her porch with a casserole dish. "We made too much lasagna," they explained with a smile. "Thought you might like some." Simple kindness, normal neighborliness. The small everyday interactions that made a community. "Come in," Maya invited warmly. "I just opened a bottle of wine." As they followed her inside, chatting about the community, garden project and the upcoming block party, Maya felt a deep sense of belonging. This was what she had worked for. Not just the house itself, but this feeling of being home, of being seen, of being valued as a neighbor and community member. The incident that had begun her time in Oak Hill would always be part of her story. But it would not be the whole story. It would be a chapter, an important one certainly, but not the conclusion. The conclusion was still being written, day by day, choice by choice, person by person. And Maya Johnson, MD, was helping to write it.